So, okay, we're gonna call the meeting to order, but anyway, the news is good.
It only grows so high before, but it keeps.
The Hāmākua Action Committee meeting will now come to order. It is Wednesday, August 7th, 2024, and the time is 5 o'clock. This meeting is held in person and by interactive. Will also be recorded on Zoom.
Right?
For Sunshine Law, AC
Hear headphones?
No.
That's anyone who is with them except for minors in their location. Okay, we'll do roll call. Vice Chair Mahealani.
How about now?
Aloha, I'm here at the Hāmākua Youth Center in Honoka'a, and I'm by myself.
Committee member, Committee member Richard Beidelman. I'm here. Committee member Tom Keeney here. Committee member Robert Nishimoto here. And I'm David Meyer, chair. We have a quorum to hold the meeting, and Brad Kurakawa is absent. From the planning department, we have Mariam Palma and Jessica Lahip. And let's see, we have some housekeeping. Please make sure your cell phones are turned off or on silent mode. If there is anyone who would like to testify, please fill out the sign-up form and give it to our staff. Zoom testifiers can send a message in the chat to the Zoom host indicating which item they wish to testify on. We ask that everyone please state your name before speaking. To all of us who are attending here in person, please remember to speak toward the OWL camera microphone so everyone on Zoom can hear. And a reminder, in order to keep in compliance with Sunshine Law, all testimony and discussion must be addressing the specific agenda item the committee is deliberating. If anyone has new business or anything else to discuss.
No, not working.
That is not on today's agenda, then that can be brought up at agenda item 5, agenda for next meeting. And testimony for agenda item 5 can be taken at the beginning of the meeting or later in the meeting when the item is called. So anyone that wants to have a new agenda item that is not, we can hear that this time, but we can't discuss it until the next meeting. So, okay. I'm going to consider approving the draft minutes from May 8th. And well, there isn't any June minutes, is there? So move.
There's yeah, 2
May
8th and June minutes.
Oh, right. I was okay.
Yes.
Even though there wasn't that, yeah. Okay. Do I have a motion? Okay, we got a motion to approve the minutes. Is there any correction? None. Okay. Moved by Richard and the guy who's second. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None, motion carries unanimously. Okay, so now it's time for the public testimony on agenda items. Time is 5 something. The committee will now call for statements from the public as stated. Okay, so is there any members of the public? Is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to testify? We don't have anything? Nope. Okay. Okay, just let us know your name and the agenda item you're talking about.
Well, my name is Dave Molinar, and the agenda item, the only one I really saw that's specific to this would be anything to do with taxes or changing, but it's kind of a general statement I wanted to make in the beginning. So I would just like to express that I think it's important that every meeting should start with a reminder of the makeup of our constituents, of the Hāmākua Coast and Hawaii Island in general. First of all, Hawaii County is the oldest population of all the islands. At least 25% of our population here, and it's growing, is over age 65. Most of the seniors are living on fixed incomes. Inflation in housing and food costs is and will be devastating to their long-term financial well-being. At least 50% of our community members meet the definition of ALICE, which stands for asset limited, income constrained, yet still employed. And so basically they're just one paycheck away from financial hardship. Okay, so that's about 50% of our constituents here on the island. 31% of Hawaii Island constituents report that they are either depressed or have anxiety. A lot of this comes from this financial situation and housing situation we experience here. Hawaii Island has 200 more reported domestic violence cases per 100,000 residents when compared to all other counties in the state of Hawaii. It's extremely shocking. So there's a lot, again, that means there's a lot of relationship and family stress, much of which has to do with their financial situations. Born and raised community members have a history of bartering and sharing. This is how many of them survive. As an example, many raise their own cattle, butcher them, and then share the meat with their family members. The same applies to when they go fishing or have extra fruit and vegetables. Ranching, rodeos, horses, and cattle are all components of the history and culture of the born and raised. If you've ever attended a rodeo, attended Western Week in Hāmākua, or watched a local parade, you will understand what I mean. We who have moved in must remember, we moved in. Therefore, it is important that we accept, understand, it's important that we accept, understand, and work with the local community to help them to continue to enjoy their country lifestyle, culture, and history, and not make new laws and codes that take that away from them. Thank you.
Yeah. So is there any? Oh, I'm sorry. What?
Is testifiers up here?
Oh, is there another testifier on Zoom? No? Okay.
Of course, I'm not only a member of the board, but I'm a member of the public. I'm wondering if I'm allowed to testify.
No, that would be.
What's that?
For Robert's rules, you can testify.
I would just like to comment on the public testimony on agenda items. The fact is that we have raised the question in the past whether public testimony could be on any subject whatsoever. And I think the information came to us that that might be counter to sunshine law. I sent a letter to the attorney of the day from the Office of Information Practices and like to read the response. The sunshine law does not prohibit a board from hearing public comments on items not on the board's agenda, although its requirement to accept public testimony is limited to the items that are on the board's agenda. Thus, a board can choose to accept public comments on issues that are not on the meeting agenda, but is not required to do this. Boards are still not able to discuss matters not on the meeting agenda, though even if someone raises something in public comments that the board is interested in taking up, if a board does want to have a public comment on items not on this meeting's agenda, period, I recommend that the agenda distinguish between that general public comment period and the public testimony on agenda items that a board is required to hear, and state that the board cannot discuss or act on items not on the agenda, but may consider them at a future meeting. So I would like to just suggest that at our next meeting, one of the items on the agenda be decision-making regarding whether we will wish to have public testimony available on any subject, or whether it will be confined to agenda items.
Right, I think I could be mistaken, but I thought that was one that I requested to be on this month's agenda, but I'm not. At this point, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I would agree that we need to sort of solidify what we're doing on this when this happens. And I think that so, I think the main point is that we can accept testimony. We're willing to accept testimony on any subject, but we also will then take the decision whether to take that up at the next meeting on the agenda so that we can have a discussion about it. Is that cover it?
If that's regarding my public testimony, then it's regarding item E, agricultural taxes, which is on the budget.
Yeah.
Let me tell you that some of the discussion that will go on tonight are dealing with the very issues that you brought up. So there'll be opportunity if you want to testify further on some of our business, and maybe you can do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure if that was questioning what I said, so I am now telling you it's specific to agriculture.
Sure, right.
Okay.
Right.
If that helps.
Sure.
Okay.
Do you know that you can have access to the CDP agenda online?
Yes, and I received the email.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I was informed. Thank you.
But I guess I have a question. I guess the way we've been like default operating is that anything that wasn't specific to any form of public testimony or comment is one that a member of the public would like to bring up, if that gets brought up, they can speak to it under item number 5 on the agenda. They can use that to have the item they're speaking to, and then they can go on to discuss whatever new business or unrelated to the agenda business they wish to discuss. And then the committee can then deliberate what they're going to do with that information.
So which item was that you were referring to?
Number 5, unused agenda items for next meeting. So per sunshine, testifiers can testify at the beginning of the meeting or when the item is called. And so what, for example, Dave did here, he gave his testimony for that agricultural tax.
Okay, yeah, so that,
but he did at the beginning of the meeting. Just, came to it on the sequence. So I guess I'm trying to distinguish having, I guess I'm not seeing the difference. If we're currently allowing people to give testimony on items technically not on the agenda under item number 5, agenda item for next meeting. What is the next level of what you're bringing to that?
Well, if in fact we're able to have this discussion, because it isn't on the agenda here, but if we're able to have this discussion, then I would say that it would be desirable to allow the public to give testimony at the beginning of the meeting on any subject that they would like, in the sense that some people may just want to come and give testimony, but don't necessarily want to wait through the whole of our agenda here. And also, particularly, they may not have an interest in it being on the agenda for the next meeting. They might want to just speak their piece, and then that's all.
I guess I still see that fitting under them being able to testify to agenda item number 5, because they can do that at the beginning. They don't have to wait for agenda number 5.
Oh, I see.
Just like how they did for.
I see.
Yeah. So, and they can just because they propose, topics and whatever they're bringing up, it doesn't mean that if the committee has to consider it or whatnot. I think that's kind of our in a sense, loophole way of allowing the community to come in. Just like that other gentleman at the last meeting came to discuss about the painting at Hāmākua town, like that, he spoke to that item, but was able to bring up something.
Yeah.
The community hadn't heard.
Well, then what I would ask would be that you would remove the on-agenda items from the section 3 public testimony.
Okay. Can you give me some potential new ways to title this item? What could be another way that we rename this item? Like not agenda items for next meeting, but maybe potential new business. Would that be more?
Well, from my own sense, I'm not sure that you need to qualify it in some way. Now, the OIP did make the suggestion that if a board does want to have public comment on items not on this meeting's agenda period, I recommend that the agenda distinguish between the general public comment period and the public testimony on agenda items that a board is required to hear, and state that the board cannot discuss or act on items not on the agenda, but may consider them at a future meeting. So I think they're suggesting that we divide public testimony into 2 sections. One is testimony on agenda items, and 2 is just public testimony in general.
Would it be fair to say that maybe what you're suggesting is another agenda item that's just simply says public comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just sort of a tough one, you know, you have.
Let me go run it through Corporation Council, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll put it on the agenda, maybe for the next meeting. The committee also decided how they feel.
It's just kind of a tough one because you have people come and they want to give their comment, and then they realize they have to come back next month to hear us talk about it. I mean, it's kind of.
Well, I don't think it would solve the fact that they're bringing up new business. They're bringing up new business, the committee still cannot make decisions.
Right. I know.
Regardless.
You kind of have a workaround with the option 5, because if somebody comes in and testifies to something that the board wants to deliberate further, you can have a discussion about it, about whether or not to add it under the agenda, under item 5. That's kind of why that was put in there as a way to funnel the public comment into a legitimate item so that you can talk about it. Well, some extent. You would just would make it, the only decision you could make is whether or not to put it on the agenda. But you could still talk.
Could we not, I mean, just as an example, tonight, could we not talk about, it was talking about people and subsistence and sharing their food under agricultural taxes? And we could discuss it under that. So there is some flexibility, I would think, depending on what's on the agenda, especially when we have these standing committees.
Yeah, that's why we tend to write the agenda and more.
Yeah.
Okay. To give us the committee that flexibility. But okay, maybe this is noted and we can continue.
Yeah. So if you want to hang around, we'll probably broach that subject when we get down to number 1.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, any other public testimony on agenda items or no?
I think it would have their answer.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to move on to updates on implementation priorities. The action committee will provide updates on their respective implementation priorities, if there are any. Fire preparedness and public access.
Well, yes, I think the important announcement, as you may all have seen, the Hāmākua fire preparedness plan has been submitted to the public. And therefore, it has passed review by the various agencies, which includes civil defense and fire and county administration. I think that there are a number of very important items that are contained in that report. Thank you. Ah, that's beautiful. I haven't seen the hard.
That's my copy. You can.
Yeah, no. And so I thought there were several of the items that deserved actually emphasis. And one was that in this report, there is enumeration of, I think, 4 communities in Hāmākua that are have a rating of high fire hazard, and those communities were Kawilo and Kauhau and Kukui Highly and YPO. Were the communities that were mentioned as being the most, having the greatest hazard from fire, wildfire. My own self living in Honokaa, I would probably want to have included Honokaa in that list, but nonetheless, those several communities I think were specified. So I think now, and this was only released about 2 weeks ago, and I haven't had a chance to actually speak with the fire department or with even the business association in Honokaa, or even the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization. I will speak with those agencies. I will relate that the fire captain in Honokaa, when I had spoken to him before, had indicated that my contact needed to be with the fire captain in Hilo, and consequently, because my request of the captain in Honokaa was that we take a perimeter walk around Honokaa and look and see, this was maybe a year ago, look and see where the potentials for for wildfire entering Hāmākua might be reduced. And so that was the point at which he said, well, he would need to have me talk with his superior in Hilo. But I think that that is the basic, my basic interest is in looking at the perimeters of these several communities that were rated high as far as fire hazard goes, and seeing if there are steps that can be taken to lessen the potential for hazard there. And of course, the thing that occurs to me is that we need to develop fire breaks and fuel breaks. Fire breaks being a more formal kind of taking it down to dirt, whereas fuel breaks are trying to do something about the all of the fuel that's surrounding these communities. If we looked at the picture, say for instance, of Hauilo, what we have is a community that's right up next to half of the community is right up next to the forest. And of course, Hauilo Makai has been the origin of 2 large fires that came up and crossed the highway and then up Mauka. And consequently, I think one living in the community of Hauilo one would be anxious about being so up close to the eucalyptus forest there, right on the eucalyptus forest. So I think what needs to happen is that we need to have discussion with those several agencies and have discussion with Kamehameha Schools. Kamehameha Schools has been doing I think, from what I've seen, a very committed job in trying to reduce the fire hazard. What I'm aware of is around the Hāmākua area. But I'm sure that they would be also highly motivated to address the problems, the potential problems in these several other communities. So I just wanted to mention that. I've drawn a kind of an imaginary fire break, fuel break around Hāmākua as it came into the new edition of the agenda that came out today, or the meeting packet that came out today. It didn't include everything that was on that schematic, but I think I just wanted to kind of give that as a picture of what I think needs to be done now that we have this fire preparedness plan. So that's all I wanted to say.
I just wanted to say my impression, just sort of reading the introduction and not getting too far into it, that they seem like they were alluding to that it's just a beginning, and it's actually still lots of work to be done in each individual community. So I think it's kind of right on the spot there. Especially I get concerned about Hāmākua with all the Main Street being wooden buildings and such. It's very important to have that urban forest, for the interface really critical.
Well, David, Heather just handed me this protection program. And I said from the get-go that if they're going to develop a plan for wildfire protection, civil defense should be the folks leading it, not a nonprofit organization. And I would go back to the county and say, I'm not buying this report until civil defense gets involved, because that's their job. Is anybody? And I don't want to be asking the fire chief what we ought to do. Civil defense ought to be going around and saying, this is what we think needs to be done, with permission from the county, and we haven't heard a damn word. Now, I'm going to tell you, I used to live in Puna, and civil defense was very involved in those lava flows because it was a hazard to the people living there, and they're not doing it here. And I admire the people who took it upon themselves, but damn it, civil defense needs to take the lead. I don't want to rely on a nonprofit organization to deal with our community services.
Anyone know if civil defense has ever been approached on why the state?
I believe they are one of the organizations that is part of the collaboration between the couple of pages here.
Yeah.
So just like anything else that county does, if we don't have the in-house expertise, we contract with somebody, and in this case, it's why we wildfire management, because they actually have the expertise.
The report should have emanated from civil defense, not from wildlife, a nonprofit.
Well, so this is the recommendation that they're giving to the county, and then that will go in the form of the multi-hazard mitigation plan, which is the report the county and civil defense produces. So this is a component that feeds into the report that this is just like these are recommendations. The decision making about what the county will actually do in fire emergency would be in the multi-hazard.
So in other words, there's going to be another report produced by civil defense.
Civil defense every 5 years has to update a multi-hazard mitigation plan. And I will acknowledge in the past, fire has been kind of this little afterthought piece. I think in the next multi-hazard mitigation plan, you see principal events, fires.
Well, it's not, as we build up into the forest areas, we gotta take that into consideration.
I don't think it was given its proper consideration in past plans, but so they are in the process of getting the plan now, that it's every 5 years.
I just want,
next
I
year.
want to see a report like this, with city defenses made.
Any other comments by anyone?
Can you, I have a comment, sorry. Or, and a question, I guess, for Ton. Are you, hello? Can you guys hear me?
Oh, hold on, one moment. Well.
Are we good now, you think? Give it a try, Mahelani.
Hi.
There you go. Yeah, we hear you.
I could only hear bits and pieces, and I apologize, but I just had a question for Ton. Are you saying that you're only going to be a part of the fire prevention thing if it includes walking around Hāmākua town, opposed to what we originally proposed, like looking at emergency fire exit, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, for Kukuihaili and Waipio?
You know, of course, that's a critical element, is emergency routes. And no, I think we need to continue that discussion. And I know that we have made or had meetings wherein we certainly that was the item of business. And however, apparently a casual approach to Kamehameha schools did not yield positive response as far as creating a emergency route from Kukuihaili. And consequently, that discussion is, I think, only in its beginning. And we need to continue work on that one. In regards to, and that's part of the issue, of course, with this fire preparedness plan. There were a couple of other communities which received high or that were considered to be at high risk from fire, and it was primarily because of their escape routes, so their access routes in an emergency. And so, yes, that's a big part of what we need to be considering in the face of this fire planning. But at this moment, I suppose my focus is on trying to look at the perimeters of these several communities and seeing how those perimeters can be reinforced as far as fire preparedness goes. But yeah, we'll be back to the emergency routes, I'm sure, before long.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Okay, I was gonna present at my section about the presentation we had from Hawaiian Electric
Mhm.
yesterday, but I'm happy to do it now because it does have to do with their power safety shut off, if you'd like me to talk about it now.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the county council had yesterday a presentation from Hawaiian Electric about their new power safety shut off plan. None of the areas where they're implementing this plan are in our district. So that is one kind of key piece of information. What we have in our district is they've added these fast mechanisms to the power lines, where when they detect something going on that could result in the start a fire, they will trip off themselves. So the two programs shouldn't be confused. The fast trip is automatic. It's based on detection by those fast trip devices. The power shutoff plan has to do when we are in red flag warning conditions, high winds, high fuel loads, and it is a decision that is made by Hawaiian Electric to shut off their power. I bring it up for you guys just to know that we are not in that. But if you know people in that area, which is Kohala, Waikoloa, that area, they should let Hawaiian Electric know, in particular for things like if they're on a medical device that requires electricity. The Hawaiian Electric will help them get what they need to be able to be serviced when the power is out. And Hawaiian Electric is trying to ensure that they give at least 24 hours notice of any of these planned shutoffs. They won't always be able to accomplish that. So if they know where these folks are, they can make sure they're priority number one to let them know if they need to, evacuate to another place or something like that. So if you have contacts in those areas, please make them aware. It's on Hāmākua's website to sign up. I'll be sharing up the link in my newsletter, but they are still doing other things in our district, like adding video cameras in areas that are potentially hazardous to watch for any sort of fire, and they're they're looking at cutting back the electricity even further from the lines that they already have. So that is on their next steps plan is being relevant.
Are they putting detection devices out among the constituency?
Yes, yeah. You mean the video cameras? Or the fast trip is going to be on all of their power lines. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess we'll move on to the next. YPO Wahipana. Mahealani, did you have anything on that?
No, we don't have an update. Maybe Heather can give an update. We haven't had a meeting in some months.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm on the fishing buoy group, and you mentioned fishing, but the challenge for, at least for this component, is fishing along Hāmākua is so unique. Access is very, very limited. So again, I appeal for anyone. There's somebody who complains about something about fishing, I'd love to contact that person personally. And to me, this is the hui. If you go places like urban areas, many clubs, many fishing people, but here, first of all, fishermen are very secretive. Access is very limited. We're more fearful now with earthquakes and also the side is pretty bad. It's kind of challenging. So there are only a few accesses. I used to work with Illinois Fisheries, so I really had the good opportunity to be invited to certain meetings. State Illinois is reaching out to fishing. But you see, the challenge always has been, fishermen do it for a reason, but they sometimes forget what questions to ask, and that's the challenging part. It's always, how come no more fish, or how come I gotta do this? Yeah. So my job, hopefully, if I meet these fishing people, I'm gonna help them reframe their questions. Okay? So, you know, I grew up here my life. Consider myself Hāmākua. But I went to a meeting yesterday, and someone in the fishing group with the state is a Kanaka Maoli. And he talked about stuff I was very impressed. And I think the key here, sir, you know, your concern is how do we respect Kanaka Maoli? You know, what is it in the chants and culture, like the doing in White Keel? You know, you go, this is really, you know, as a Kanaka Maoli that was born here at the same time, this is respect. But with that comes a really valuable insight and, you know, for them to share things with us, it must be hard with this generation, you know, and that's the part of respect comes in. So I kind of approached that person and we chatted a long time. You know, are we going to restore a place? Okay, what is it you want to restore? Well, let's look at a place like Anai Ho'omalu. Anai means giant face and all that. So was there a mala there before? We want to restore it like that over there. Yeah. The state is ignorant because it's always, you go Western education, you come back, you forget it's all about electroshocking and fish pounds and all that stuff. But it doesn't apply here. So what I'm trying to do is it's really challenging. You don't find any fishing pleasure. Okay? Most people, I think, when Tom talks about fire and eucalyptus tree, when I go to a class, I say, I know what Tom's talking about. But you know, when I say, hey, what about fishing? All you see, most people talk about the cliff. You don't see my mind because when you fly, you probably look at, oh, where's my house? When you come in hot airline, you don't see the river. So there's groups at state groups, county group, Oscar group, there are agencies that are willing to be partners. But it's up to the community to this reason. We can ask them, what is the question we want to answer? I work for them, so I can be able, I think I'm able to rephrase the question to maybe don't answer someday, but this is where I am. So the question I really get frustrated, what am I, you know, what am I yelling at all the state guys over? You don't have money, get a job to do. But here's what I thought. This is a scheme environmental groups use. And I see a problem with environmental groups because usually they come from the mainland and talk about mainland approaches. So it's okay. How do the business side attract consumers? And I thought about, I told this guy the story before about Walt Disney and his lovely ability to attract a crowd because of, you know, humans, when you see babies, will go down, you know, your aggressiveness really slows itself. So how am I, instead of going to the agency people talk about fishing or maybe Uncle fishes on some secret, you won't tell me anything like that. But I know there's fishing because I grew up here and used to fish during the sugar spike days. So, but now I you know, so I get the chance to do some of this stuff. And I want to, if any of you have someone, I'll go visit them. I'll go visit them. So I can bridge them. So I'd like to do that, but I have not, I'm kind of saying, well, what does I want to do now? You know, so okay, let me do one of these Walt Disney type public campaign. You know, what rips at your heart? You know, a lot of states do that. The little thing in Texas is the same thing they did. Yeah. And here's what I got. Okay. If you look at turtles, you look at turtles, you go to any store, a turtle is never on a seafood market shelf, or is it never on a fridge? It's always about decorating your shrimp only, right? Everybody has that only. We have two turtles, two species, the green sea turtle, and there's the other one called Hāmākua. That's the hospital. The small turtle. It's critically endangered. It's basically most of the time the eggs hatch in volcano national parks are on the side. But I found out I have a report that the babies migrate Hāmākua, and this is where they grow up. I say a report, but also boss, have you seen a home, baby home? Because you're not gonna report it. Yeah. But if you're in Hānāma Bay or you're in Pahalu, you say, oh, I love those, let me hug those turtles, right up in the. This something I want to create that community push, I think. So I'm going to try to tell that story. And here's my approach. I'm actually for people. Honoea is a small species and people don't eat it. But I found out that Hawaiians used to catch that. And they just take the shell, polish it, and make goggles. They would cut bamboo and make goggles. Okay? But they also use it for jewelry too. But I found out yesterday from Nakamori that the Honoea is used, the shell they use to treat respiratory disease. Oh, so what story am I going to tell? Because most people don't see a turtle or a monk seal, you know, in Honolulu, they're like, oh, my heart breaks. That's what I'm crazy. How do I treat that? Honoea is a unique species. It feeds on sponges. I'm not used to sponges here. Not the sponge in Florida that goes like this, you know. It's like almost like creepy crawls on the skin. It's not very, it's really ugly. Yeah. But it's a sponge, and this is what Honoea feeds on. And they'll eat sponges have spicules in them, like little spines in them, like, and they get into meat. A lot of people don't eat that. They get caught for the shell in the Pacific as well in the Caribbean. So these sponges, okay, so lovely. The sponge is like your human lung. You know, the way sponge is a very simple animal. It's basically a sack of tissue that is holes in it. One way to come in, like through your mouth and you breathe, and only to go out. And this is how they filter and they feed on country. Okay? Imagine if you have a landslide here, or imagine you have sediments in the water. What happens? You can equate that to smoking and lungs, right? In cancer. This is the first thing I want to do to get the public's attention. Most people don't really see a turtle or even see the beach with it's like. It's like tell that story. It's going to bring in one, help the federal system when they listed the species. Number two, it's going to drag the company into the process because it has to do with land-based pollution. You know, because we can talk all we want, but who gives the most money to politicians, developers? But they don't make any regulation about pollution. I'm not concerned. I mean, I people understand that. But again, this is a approach I want to talk. You know, I don't know whether I can finish it or not, but something that's a scheme this side. You know, so again, first of all, I'd much rather have someone working. Your grandpa used to fish on what are the issues here? Or I like to say, oh, my uncle went catch more yesterday, but you know, oh, that bugger was so some rubbish, and the bugger went get mad. Okay. I know Susan Gardner's Hakalau Home website had a piece on landscape. And her attempt for the group was to warn future land purchasers that love to go on the coast. Look at Inolina, it's a crazy one right over the bridge. To warn them that don't be dumb, well, there's an issue, but whatever it is. But so how do we get the public attention? You know, when you talk about fire, you can see that. I could see all this, but when I talk about turtles and pollution, will make them aware. And most people that fish, most of them, just all their lives will never see underwater. Yeah. But as I told you before, I posted people that are these are crazy kidnappers. They're really crazy, really stupid. They go 900 feet to diving without speed. And they're pathway. What do you see at 80 feet on the ground? Hāmākua is mostly boulder. This is what you have this really nice feet. The one we use for the necklace. You can find them in a great box. All these folks, 80 feet, You go down, it's nice to be right, like if you hand and see the dust, kind of sediments. So how do I tell that story is where I want to push this issue? Because you who talks about agriculture, you could see agriculture, you could see your neighbors suffering, and you could see neighbors have the basis must be with domestic violence, all this, like whatever term you use about the spread. I understand that. So how can I have the same story for people that also fish? You know, but the county is not, but I always had a good grace to be with states I could see from that side, but I couldn't see the county side perspective, because I never worked with it. So if you can bring those two together and get the feeling come up and have this community sense, why are you doing this? So this is kind of what I want to achieve maybe, but anyway, I'll stop there. In other words, I tried, there's a group in Hāmākua. I go see them, I tell my story, I preach, like going to church on Sunday, yeah, you heard the sermon, and turn around and whether you do a good deed or not, I don't know. But rather than, I'm kind of concerned with, we can't relate to agency matters. But now, like Heather Stewart, she listens to us. It's like the state guys I'm working with, even the state coastal zone management, they're listening, tell me what is it you want? Because finally, after how many years, government finally realized, oh, one size does not fit all, right? What's good for Hāmākua is not damn good for here. You know, so that's the issue. So there's a chance now, and I'll stop at that. But in other words, I got nothing to report. Just I'm going to reload again, and I think my powder was wet, so I got my powder blind. That's my report.
Want to make a comment on that? I mean, you're talking about access. I mean, I used to go to the Puyallup landing, and that's now all blocked off. Yeah. And that was very enjoyable. I'm not a fisherman, but you know, I guess you have to, if you're a fisherman, you have to sign up. There was a whole process I was told that they got to go through just to get access to it. But it's all gated off. That was all open, all public at one time. And then the best access for the most, if you want to make a difference, is our boat ramp here off of Whitewood. Because that's stopping a lot of people. Like I kind of wanted to try to go out and go kayak fishing, but just to get in and out of that with the rebar.
Kayak,
you know, I wanted to try that, you know, but it's just dangerous. It's dangerous for anybody to get in and out. And that's a very local tradition of going fishing here on the coast. And so that's the #1 access point for people in this community, and so if you could help fix that, that would be great.
One thing is Robert made a proposal for the county to acquire that land, didn't you, Robert?
what's that?
You made a proposal to the county to acquire that property?
No.
There's the one in Pipic here that's being considered by.
Oh, this estuary, yeah, that's right.
That's a different one.
It's not the same.
The other one in,
You know, I know it takes a lot of effort to go get a launching rack. The reason why it's built here is because of the emergency medical stuff in here, but it's really a complete situation. I think a plan B may be a better approach. If you ever go to Lockhart State Park, Lockhart does not have a boat ramp. You can't design a boat ramp there, so ideally they have a gantry. Smaller boats can be lifted and put down. It is something for kayak fishermen can put down. Is there something there? But if you want to build a ramp, the way this ramp is, the breakers is just can't really. So maybe something small instead of, you know, I don't think you're gonna walk away like a 35-foot gravity from Hilo come over, and you can't come out of the turn because it's blocking your way. Those are big boats, and these are the people that go to the beach, and these are the big boat guys that go to stuff. So maybe shooting something smaller, you know, maybe jet skis, kayak fishing, you know. You guys are post maybe a little more feasible, but this I'm glad we can talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, just local people have boats. I mean, they say there's a limited catch out here because of Mother Nature. It only allows you to go out there infrequently, you know, but it's been their way in and out. And I've seen local people do it, but it's so dangerous. I mean, it's so rough. They've got to have an extra extension in the trailer. It's a high skill set, and you know, and everybody's getting older, so that skill set is moving away, so there's less and less access.
So if I can speak to that really quickly, there was, Army Corps is responsible for the breakwater, the county is responsible for the ramp. The plan had been to fix the ramp because the Army Corps had coral on the breakwater, which means the whole project has to account for moving that coral, all the environmental assessments, which brought it up over the price because of the $8 million where they had to get congressional more people. Myself, Mark Nakashima, and Senator Schatz all worked together, and we got earlier this year $40 million approved for the ramp and the breakwater. That is scheduled to start next June or July. What I think is really important is that a couple of people, it may have been Robert that brought it up, or some other community member, we need to start thinking about how access is going to be during that work. And so I think that'd be a great thing for this body to take up, is to kind of reflect back to the county as well as Army Corps, like what requirements the community will have during work access, during the work. So if there still needs to be some access through there, let's make sure they know about it before they get started. Don't ask me about swimming because DLR, the harbor then becomes DLR, and you know they're not going to say yes, let people swim in the boat harbor. They're just not going to do it. So you're too well with the swimming.
That was the only thing I was going to say.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of people in the community like,
You know,
they like when I said if there's a ladder there, I'm not going to report it. But you know, the county's never put a ladder in or anything like that. Yeah.
Do you know the duration of the construction?
It's probably going to be pretty massive. They are not moving the breakwater, but they're using the current footprint. They're kind of restructuring it because you know the way it was structured didn't attenuate the ways that all effects may have made them worse. So they're going to still use the same footprint. They've got to relocate all that coral. The ramp part should be pretty quick, honestly, but the repair of that breakwater is kind of complete. We'll know more, I would say, by the end of the year, and then I've already committed to making sure that we have community meetings so that there's lots of public input about access during that time. Everybody knows.
the one thing that I had heard, and I hope that they do go forward with that, is that they were talking about designing the boat ramp. You know, I mean, it's gonna stay the same, but build it in blocks of cement, big pieces, and things, so that you can put them in with a crane and take them out. And so they don't have to shut, they can quickly do that. I've seen that in Washington State and other places, so. You know, so hopefully that is part of the design, so that even if it does erode in a period of time, because it takes so long, then they can just replace it again quickly.
Yeah, that's the plan, because the county had originally designed, if we were told by Army Corps, just go ahead and replace the ramp. The strategy was, like you said, the sectional piece. And then when the money was appropriated from Congress, they said, no, just wait for us, because they didn't want to. So now it's all one big project instead of two phases, because we have some certainty that the Army Corps space.
But it's still gonna keep the boat ramp as the boat.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about it moving or anything like that, but yeah. But the sectional concept is still like.
Just the one, use level with each part and think about the conflict. Well, think about the conflict of usage, you know, because if you ever seen a 26 foot wedding come on the road, good luck to you, you get back up, you won't back up. So think about those issues. You know, if a boat is going down and coming up, if you're a little warned, then I'm not going to go down with my little car. I gotta back up because if a boat ain't gonna back up, it's bigger than a boat ramp issue, and it becomes a conflict, a huge conflict issue. And this thing about swimming is a big issue. Poiki, I know you've been to Poiki boat ramp before. That's about that. Prime fishing ground, they had fights between punas. How come my puna cannot swim over here? How come you got a launch your boat?
Right.
Yeah, a boater comes in, you only come in, you can't stop it. It's not like Washington State boat ramp. It's different if you've been in one of the programs.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot slow down, you gotta gas up. And somebody has put the ramp in a boat ramp, a boat sails in the water. Say, okay, I hit the wave, I gotta come this one in, the small one, run it, and keep the engine power forward, and I gotta drop it sometime.
It's an art.
Exactly, you know, if you ever do Pohiki, I work with that issue. So think about the worst case. I'm not putting you guys on, it's just that we don't want to hear conflict. If this voters want it, let them pay for it. This is where you put your vote. Don't put your hand here in the pavilion and stay 2-3 nights. You know, don't play your fish over there. Those are very serious issues. So,
And the road has similar problems to the other road.
Oh, yeah.
And we also have the egress issue there and no alternate method of egress. And so there are definitely problems. And I actually would like to ask this group to think about another fishing area, which is Hāmākua Beach Park, which we thought we were going to be able to open. DOT came back and said, no, you cannot open it now because we're afraid of things falling and people from the bridge. But then I went down there were plenty of fisher people, there were plenty of surfers. And my thought was, well, you know, it's kind of like a little beach now because it should be a beach. So how do we kind of, there's something like in the middle there that's between not being open and not being public to being fully open and fully accessible, but I think maybe we want to look at Hāmākua. But I don't know what that looks like. It's just that as I was there's a lot of areas that are dangerous by liability standards of the county. So I can imagine what it would look like if we were to reopen it. There's going to be tons of it that's just fenced off. You're going to have fence everywhere. That's going to diminish that place a lot, I think. So anyway, I don't know what to do. Looking for ideas, but I don't think in that scenario, definitely thinking about unintended consequences of fully reopening it. Maybe there's somewhere in the middle that is the right place.
Certainly some restrictions even allow for hoi on both sides between the road and the ramp and the.
but that's not gonna stop people.
No, but
Yeah, it
slows down on some people.
Because boaters go from here and they go fish their private doing nothing like that.
Yeah.
So it's just so much imagine this here. So again, it's something to, I'm not pouring water on the issue, but think about it. Is it good for the community? Yeah, so. Anyway.
Okay, well, we took care of item number 2. There we go. Okay, Paul. Is there anything on that?
Well, yes, the property which we had nominated to the Pond Commission was selected with the second highest ranking out of 10 nominations. The property which did take the highest priority for county purchase also was the property which was nominated and received the highest ranking last year. It was Kapala'oa, which is a property immediately south of Anahuamalu Bay. And there's a lot of historic significance there, petroglyphs, etc. And Anchor ponds. So we felt very good about coming in second. And I made a mistake last month. I noticed in my testimony last month that from the minutes of the last meeting that I had indicated that that following the nomination, which I believe took place, the selection of the nominees, which took place on the 9th of July, I had been under the impression that relatively soon after that, the rankings of properties would be presented to the mayor. After presentation to the mayor, that they would be presented by the mayor's office to the county council. But it turns out that the Punk Commission does not need to submit that listing to the mayor until the end of the year. So it needs to be presented before December 31st. Last year, it was presented in early November. So I think there's some latitude, but that was somewhat disappointing to me. I had thought, well, you know, things are speeding up here. And of course, the property is on the market. And I wouldn't say in danger of being sold to private individuals, but it's been on the market for probably now could be 5 or 6 months, and you know, it hasn't sold. The last I spoke to the realtor, he said that there had been no significant offers. It's valued at $8 million. It's 80 acres, and so I suppose there's a good chance that it will continue until the end of the year, at which time if the mayor presents the properties to the county council, then I believe Heather would be able to make a resolution to the council that the county go ahead and attempt purchase of these properties or enter into negotiation with the owner. So that's where that stands.
Is there some reason why they would wait till the end of the year? Is there?
It's been a historical process, and that has in part been because of just the mechanics of it and the staffing availability. I know that several of the COM members are interested in trying to expedite that. Because it's not only the reports about the nominations, but then the stewardship reports as well. And we are like a year behind getting out the money towards stewardship, which is not good. So Todd is correct as far as the process is right now. This year, I probably won't, we probably won't have the reports presented to council until the end of the year. And I can't do the resolution to negotiate until that happens. But I think the body is working on trying to make that cadence a little faster so that we aren't, you know, waiting us properly.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I do think this property has a really good shot. But
yeah.
Because it ranks so highly, it doesn't have the same issues as the property in Hāmākua. But we can, you know, if we can hold up with being a little just like right, I guess I don't know. I think it's good. It has a lot of potential.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This, I look forward to the purchase of this because it has the estuary as a freebie. And a lot of people are pushing about estuaries are important to have a very productive coastline. So if we can buy, if one can buy that and the storage can be called an estuary, and maybe it connects ocean with the county activity. So that this would be a really value added.
Yeah. Thank you for your help with that. Very important. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was just looking for something. I'm leaving out. Okay, next is CIP budget / agricultural taxes. Basically just had a couple of questions now that the agricultural taxes have sort of come out in the open here and what the changes are and things. One of my questions that came to mind was the plan as it seems to be presented. I know it's a tax plan, but it doesn't seem to really deal with the preservation of farmland, keeping it from being consumed the way it is now by people buying property, building a retirement home or a trophy home on it, and then potentially probably never being farmland again. And there are ways to try to preserve farmland, and it just doesn't seem to be part of the process. So, do you have any?
Yeah,
Carry that with you a lot lately, don't you?
it's been I keep it in my bed. Yeah, so. The objective, one of the objectives with respect to the changes that we made with the agricultural plan was to reduce the level of speculations we talked about before on agricultural land, by limiting the abuse of the program at some level. And, you know, it really, it's one of the levers that we have. Is it the greatest lever? No. Is it the most impactful? No. I mean, you're talking about, I give the example of a property that is fairly close to me that is 80 acres, has not been in agriculturally used since it was purchased from the King Company in '94, so 30 years. Paying the minimum tax because the agricultural exemption of 100 and then 200 a year. So maybe like 5,000 over the first 30 years, $5,000. So it's the property tax. A quarter of that property is now being sold for $600,000. It's that kind of speculation that is possible because of our agricultural property tax use structure. And so that's one of the issues that we're trying to address. And the whole effort to revise the real property tax structure started with an audit in 2012, an outside audit of this chapter 19, which identified, among other things, that our agricultural programs did not have enough proper controls to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. And so there were a number of working groups and ad hocs and things like that identified, okay, how could we put some controls on this? Because we as the county, of course, have a fiduciary responsibility to all the taxpayers to make sure that when we're providing these benefits, they're being provided appropriately and fairly. So just a couple of things. There's the 10-year program, which we tried to make it a little bit more desirable by having the values that come through the assessment. That is one way to kind of hold it in ag a little bit longer, right? And the thing with the 10-year program is if you subdivide it, you can subdivide it, but that 10-year dedication stays with the property. So if it's now 2 properties, each property has a 10-year dedication. The other thing is that with COVID between 21 and 22, we saw a market increase in land values, because of the market sales. The market went crazy. And so a lot of the older farmers, while they had the agricultural protections for their values, they didn't have the agricultural protections for their homes. And so in districts like ours, where there were areas where home values went up by as much as 20%, those folks were really getting hit by the taxes on their home, on the land. Because before, you had to choose, okay, I'm going to be in non-dedicated ag for the 10-year program, or I'm going to be in the homeowners class and get that protection.
And you had to figure out the formula,
yeah,
which
was the better one. So what we did in the council last year, 2023, and I did share this with you guys, that we moved the ag classes into the homeowners class. If you live on your property, you now will have that protection of the 3% cap, and your property tax rate will go from 9.35 to 5.95. And so that's another way to enable, to really protect farmers that are in their homes, that are living on the farms. They didn't have that protection before. So that, again, that's another way to keep farmers and other companies that are farming, keep them in their properties. The other thing I will say is that the main revisions to despite what's out there, the main revisions to the dedications of the real property tax code is that rather than you just submit an application and maybe if somebody reports you, real property tax will go out and ensure that you're actually farming, we're requiring some bigger work up front. And so in our conversations with some of the members of the ag community, they didn't want to just go with a farm plan. They wanted us to accept other types of paperwork. So if you have an organic use or organic certification, like if you've got that, it's hard to get, you're probably farming. If you've got a food safety certification, that's hard to get, you're probably farming. And people that are taking advantage of the NDA program are not going to have those things. The other one that specifically speaks to your question is people can do an agricultural conservation easement. We lost the screen. What happened? Is anybody there?
Zoom is fine.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah, we
We
can't
see you here, we're just trying to get you on the projector.
If you can hear me, I'll keep going, otherwise I'll wait.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So the last one I was gonna mention is, there's something called an agricultural easement that you can, through USDA, work with a nonprofit entity that will purchase an easement on your property to keep it in agriculture in perpetuity. And so they basically pay you for this easement. That is one way to qualify for the tax benefits, but then it's also a strategy to keep it in agriculture.
Right.
And just one really important kind of point that I want to make is that the non-dedicated ag program has always required an agricultural license. And I think I read this to you guys last time, that the rule that applies to non-dedicated ag, Rule 24, it says that it has to be an agricultural use, and that it does not include or apply to areas that are used as farm dwelling sites, yard space, setbacks, open landscape associated with residential use, planted with fruit trees, ornamental trees, flowers, vegetables, primarily for home use or recreation. And so, that has always been true of the ag program. I really kind of think about it like it's the difference between having a garden to, put food on your table alone versus, having a pet cow versus versus farming, right? Is it great? Yeah, a little bit, but I know that, to David's comment about bartering and sharing and all of that, I think one of the really misunderstood components of this is the requirement for the monetary value to qualify this program. And there's a really important and I know it's in there and I know the intent of it because I wrote it, that basically says that you're farming if you're producing income or you're using practices that are typically understood to be agricultural. So if you are, if you're raising cattle and you're sharing that, as long as you are following the accepted practices of cattle raising, you will qualify for this program. The difference is if you don't know anything about farming, you have a pet cow that you think is cute, and that is a difference. Same with working animals, right? They're part of a farm operation, and you're following standard procedures. Then I did want to share with you folks the draft of the farm plan. I can let you look at this. I can't let you have it because it's not official yet, and I don't want anything out there that's not the official document. But I'm happy to have you take a look at it tonight and share with me any comments and feedback that I can give that to our PT. They do have to have this finalized by September 2nd, and that's the other just one last.
You're gonna make me lose my next question here.
Yeah. My last point was that September 2nd is the day that the short-term program and the community food sustainability program become available. September 1st is the last day they'll accept any non-dedicated ag program applications. So that's new applications. The time, it is a year. It is September 2025 that you need to apply for one of the other programs if you're in non-dedicated ag. Again, if you qualify for non-dedicated ag now, you most likely qualify for one of the new programs. We'll decide which one. We are, so you save this for my report, we are introducing a bill at the end of this month, the 20th, that will extend that to 2020. people wanted a little more time to figure out how they were gonna comply and everything like that, so. People will have 2 years to figure out which program they wanna be in with those.
So if you know, well, let me get back to it, well. So if you do know now exactly what you want to do and you apply the first day you get a chance, does it still have to wait for everyone else?
No,
You
no,
just-
not at all,
Okay.
not at all. If you know what you wanna do, and I encourage people to do that because. If everybody waits till the end, it's gonna be this logistical nightmare. But if you know what you wanna do, just go ahead and put the application in. Fill out your farm plan. If you don't have any of those other forms of documentation, it'll be on the website after September.
Yes, so I guess my other point on the preserving farmland would be, you know, it's a real pickle area with small farmers, large farmers, and everybody in between. But the way you're really gonna preserve farmland isn't on those small parcels. So the way you're gonna preserve farmland is the big parcels, by preserving those. And by not putting some more requirements on the big parcels, you're really just losing chunk after big chunk of farmland.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's some ways to do it that are very controversial, I'm sure, by requiring much higher than a $2,000 gross limit, but maybe you could, you know, apply that only to larger parcels. You could apply the amount you have to earn based on the size of your plot.
Yeah, and so like that was one of the recommendations that was actually in the report. That was one of the data points that was taken into this process. It was one of the recommendations we chose not to do because we do have more and more small farmers. And with newer technologies, greenhouses, hydroponics, everything, you can have very productive farms on much smaller acreages. What I think is our next strategy on this is because we have this mixture of smaller, down to an acre, right, in our state land use ag, in the same category then with these much larger acres. Anytime you try to regulate ag, you have to account for all these non-conforming uses on the smaller lot. So if we can separate at the state level, state land use ag for those larger parcels, push the smaller parcels into rural, which can do still all the ag things and still get all the tax benefits, but we can then regulate them a little bit differently without having the unintended consequences for the smaller farms. That is kind of my next strategy. The other benefit to that is that you can do more as far as building accessory dwellings on smaller farms that we can't do now in state land.
So somehow differentiate on those size parcels of what their requirements are. You'd have to do something at the state level first.
That is the strategy that I think will be most effective because it triggers a whole bunch of other things and it doesn't have the tax implications that maybe some other strategies might have. And you know, in addition to regulating the land use, we can regulate a little bit differently for like transient accommodations, farm tours, things like that. We have challenges with our ability to do that right now because those smaller lots are falling under the same constrictions that ag is, and it's really hard. We're always gonna screw somebody over. Like,
so it works both ways. I mean,
yeah.
to really make it work right,
Yeah.
For the small and the large.
And we have like 800 acres in rural on this island, if you can imagine. I mean, all of these plantation counts should be rural. They shouldn't be in ag, and many of them are.
Right.
So if I'm open to other suggestions, but to me that seems the most impactful right now. And there was a bill that actually made it almost open, and we're going to introduce it again.
In the state,
It has to be well, like
is that
what we're hoping is that the state will enable us to do it.
Right.
We cannot do it right now without going through a very lengthy, probably decade-long process. If we can come up with a strategy for them to enable us to do it through an emergency.
if you have some of those ideas, if you have, you know, some way to share some of those, if we have, be much appreciated.
Yeah.
Hey,
Pam Elders, wanted to ask a question.
okay. Go ahead, Pam. Well,
Yeah, you're-
Can you mute it?
Happens every meeting.
I have 4 acres, which is zoned Ag 20. And so half of my acreage is a pasture. And I have spent a significant amount of money getting it hog wired and keeping it so that it is good pasture land. It's high quality pasture land. And I don't get a tax exemption. And I wouldn't, I just recently, and I have for a number of years, had a cooperative agreement with a local rancher, and he has had his horses, and now I have 11 sheep on my back pasture. So I can't, but I'm not doing it because I'm too old to do it. And he, I can't justify, I can't prove that I'm earning, because I'm not earning $1,000 to qualify for this program. Yet I feel very, I feel like I've made a significant effort to preserve pasture land and to set up a system that works for this rancher. And he rotates his animals and things like that. So what is, I mean, it seems like, an unintended consequence would seem like maybe people who say, well, I can't get a tax break, but I'm limited in what I can do with my land, so I think I should be rezoned. So I mean, it seems like there's a development opportunity there, which is what the community development plan definitely didn't want to happen. People wanted to retain the rural character of the Hāmākua coast, and so I worry about those kinds of things, because I think there's a lot of, a number of developers who are just waiting in the wings to have an excuse to, rezone their property and be able to do whatever they want with it. So I don't know. I'm wondering, Heather, what you think about that. And is there a possibility to, I mean, it seems like to promote more flexibility and cooperativeness between, landowners and ranchers or farmers is a good thing. I mean, because if they don't have enough money to buy their own property, being able to use someone else's is really important. And
yeah,
so
absolutely.
to be able to cobble those things together seems to be really.
So if I may respond, one of the things that we're definitely trying to encourage with this is folks working with other farmers and making their land available for pasturing or any other kind of farming. Like we have a lot of young people coming out of some agricultural training programs that cannot find a place to farm. And so that's part of one of the things that we're trying to incentivize. So with your scenario as an example, there's 2 ways to approach it. You as the property owner could submit the farm plan, and then you would just show that you have this agreement with the rancher, and that would qualify you for the program. Mm-hmm. Alternatively, if your rancher has like 10 different properties where they rotate, they can submit the farm plan and list your TMK as one of the properties that's part of this rotation program. In that case, you still get the tax benefit, but there's just one farm plan for the full 10 properties that are part of that this rancher is operating. So there's actually a lot of flexibility built into this. And I know that there's a lot of frustration because the program is not super specific about things. And there's a reason for that, is that if we nail some real hard specifics down, we lose that flexibility to account for
well, it just seems like there,
types of farms.
It just seems like there hasn't been a lot of outreach and efforts to try to let people know what their options are, because it's hard. If you live here and you have a small property, you don't necessarily know a bunch of ranchers or farmers or, you know, so connecting those two groups together seems really important. I mean, I don't.
And
you know,
I will totally acknowledge that we screwed up. I think they could use another expletive, but the county screwed up in terms of our education about this before the letters were sent out about the NDA. A lot of people got concerned and a lot of people got incorrect information. We are trying to, I've been on like the property tax roadshow for the last month, but trying to talk to different members of the community, share with them what this is actually about. We are working on a mailer that we are going to mail out to everyone with all of the links, all of the options. I think having a farm plan, the example farm plan will help a lot of people because it's really just clear. You check these boxes. If you can't check a box like the $2,000, like you said, it's an or thing. You have the $2,000, or you can explain how you're doing your practice is an agricultural use. Like if you click 2,000, then no need to answer any more questions. You've done forms like that before. That's what the farm plan looks like. But the other thing that I'll add is that your idea, we've spoken with a couple of nonprofits as well as our R&D department to kind of curate that list of folks of like, I'm looking for a farm and I've got land, like, so we can start to make those connections, because that is one of the objectives.
Yeah, because you know, I've tried to do farming, and you know what I can do myself, it's just impossible. You can't, you know, I just had a really hard time finding a place to sell my stuff and make enough money to make it even worth my time, you know. So so I think whatever can be done to help people be cooperative and to, you know, share resources and stuff is a way to preserve you know, small scale farming on the Hāmākua coast.
So you know, it's $2,000 in cash value or money's worth, or you're just demonstrating that you're using agricultural practices. So those folks that are doing bartering and sharing and stuff like that, but as long as they can demonstrate, because with an ag use, even without the $2,000, they qualify. The community food sustainability program, you do need the $1,000. That is not as good of a tax benefit. It's actually a program that is intended to incentivize people that have more of the garden situation where they don't qualify as ag use, to get them to put food into the food system. So, but it's not as big of a benefit, but it is way too cheap. And so I think one of the other misconceptions is that non-dedicated ag turned into this community food sustainability program. It didn't. It's the short-term dedicated program, which is more akin to what the non-dedicated program is and intended to.
Heather, I'm unclear as far as the relationship between the efforts in the draft general plan to make a good deal of what I believe now is agricultural zoned land, redesignate that in terms of its land use category into rural. And I'm wondering, of course, I think my first response would be, oh gosh, then won't that actually take a lot of properties that were intended to be perhaps farmed, intended to be productive agricultural properties, and put them in to other uses?
So that's a great question, and I was speaking to that a little bit before. In the rural versus agricultural designation is the state land use designation, and then our zoning sits on top of that. And so in both the ag and rural state land use, you can have ag zoning, you could have farmland ag zoning, you have residential zoning, like this, well, not residential, but there's like residential and agricultural zoning, which doesn't really get used anymore. But by moving the smaller lots, and we're talking like the acre or less, into rural as opposed to being in ag, they still can do all the ag stuff. If they want to do ag stuff, they can do the ag stuff, they can get the ag benefits. They could seek rezoning, but that's not an automatic to residential. It would still conflict. The rural is not an automatic residential thing. So we still could conflict on that level, but by, as I was saying to David, by separating those two, we can better ensure agricultural use on those larger plots, because right now we have so much rural, like if you think about it, all of HPP, Fern Acres, Cove, Ocean View, like that's all state land use ag.
Yeah.
And so when we try to make a policy for agriculture, to say, okay, you have to have these agricultural uses, we have to account for all of those, and many of those are really residential, honestly.
Yeah.
So pulling them out actually makes it better for us in terms of preserving agriculture.
I see. I see. Yeah.
Okay,
I've got a number of comments. First of all, the original study was done in 2012.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, okay. But that's almost 13 years ago instead of an outside study.
It was a mandated external audit, yes.
What was that done by?
I don't.
Okay, well, that's critical when we're talking about what I talked earlier about cultural traditions, you know, in history here, right? So an outside study probably wouldn't have taken any of that into consideration. So that needs to be on the table as far as discussions, and to make sure that study needs to come out publicly. Was that all considered in that study? And it's now 13 years old. A lot of things have changed. I'm really adamant. I want to see that study, and was all the cultural things and the heritage and the history of this coastline taken into consideration in that study. That's number one. That's very important.
May I just clarify? Yeah, so that was a fiscal audit. It wasn't a study. So the fiscal audit, we are required to do fiscally audit the town periodically. We hire an outside consultant to do that, so there's no conflict of interest. So it was not identified about like how the program needed to be improved or anything changed. What was identified was that it was a weakness where we had vulnerability to fraud, waste, and abuse because there were inadequate controls, which is kind of auditor speak where the rules aren't strong enough to make it.
So there's about 8,000 non-dedicated properties.
Yeah.
Right? How many do you estimate are using the system?
We have no idea.
Good to know that, you know, but I think it's more important that you're going after the users than going after the whole 8,000 people. So you should know that up front.
And that is why we're asking for the mark plan up front, is that that'll help us distinguish between people that are actually engaged in agricultural use from those that are.
And then I brought this up in the public meeting, but I read it and it's right here. I can give you guys a copy of this, but it's very clear that the requirements out there. It says, okay, one, the application needs to be submitted. Okay. Two, you have to submit Schedule F of your 1040 or the G49 of the previous year. Previous year, you got to show that you're already making this money. Okay. Then it goes on to 3. In addition, and that's where it goes all down to things in the last there's 4. So that's not an or. You keep saying it's an or, but it's not an or.
What you're looking at, David, are the rules. The rules are what the department uses to enact the code. The code, which is the law that I read 2 moments ago, is what the department has to follow. I wrote the code. I know what it says. It says or. Those rules are intended as guidelines, but this is the.
This is what was provided to all of us.
Those are the draft.
Yeah.
It's
so
very
then why isn't that? Then that needs to be fixed and sent to everybody. Because this is exactly what was shared with all of us. This is the website and the rules that we went to educate ourselves about this program. So it conflicts with what you're saying. I haven't seen what you're saying about the code, but I can read this and I know what this says. And I didn't have access to the code, but I have access to this. But we were all given this link to. So anyway, I have a problem with that because that's not the way that it states. This is what everybody's reading. This is what everybody's reading. So there's a lot of hard feelings about that when you keep saying the other, because that's not what this says.
The bottom line is this is the code supersedes anything that is in there, and that was a draft. Get public feedback, and they need to correct it to be in the line. I don't write the rules. I'm not allowed to write the rules. I'm only allowed to.
That's why I just created an enormous amount of stress.
I understand that.
throughout the whole community.
I
A
believe
lot of stress because of this.
Right, so it's a draft rule at this
the
point.
draft rule, which is what the department has to write, I can't write
Yeah.
it.
And then so the public's opportunity to make,
That happened on July 18th.
okay, so there was an
The
opportunity to
department will
make
go back and
comments.
revise the rules, and there were some items identified in the hearings of the rules that will result in code changes. So we have a couple of
So it
modifications.
isn't, none of it's final yet. Then.
Nothing's final,
Yeah.
the code is never final.
Right. Well, so,
Yeah.
And the message I want, to share with you guys is there's about 4,000 of these 8,000 properties that are in pasture. Okay. 2,200 approximately are less than 10 acres. So half of it. Okay, so but you're required that you have to have 10 acres unless you buddy up with other people to get more than that. Okay, so it's throwing a lot of stress on a lot of people with small lots if they can't buddy up or go jump through all these other hoops. So that's that's a real challenge right there. And then in the community development plan that I read that was finalized in 2018, under objective 12 here, it says preserve traditional subsistence practices and encourage a reciprocity bargaining economy and a sustainable Hāmākua's resource-based economy. That's in this Hāmākua community development plan. So what this is proposing is in conflict with that. And also in your Hāmākua community development plan, it talks about trying to avoid rural sprawl at all costs. Okay, it's all possible, or all possible. I have 2 small properties. If my taxes go up 1,500 to 2,000% and I can't figure a way to join in, I'm most likely to sell that. I'm most likely to sell it to the highest bidder from the mainland, right? And it's going to come in, that's going to create rural sprawl.
so how much did you say your taxes were going to go up?
1,500 to 2,000%.
2,000%?
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
I didn't plan on coming into his debate, but I will acknowledge 2 things here. First of all, the minimum lot size, this is the code, again, supersedes those rules. The code, which I wrote, so I know it's accurate, says that the minimum lot size per farm operations will be determined by a schedule that will be in the rules for each commercial activity category. So there's one for pasture, diversified ag, all of that. Except, again, as important as the or, except where there are dedication petitions that indicate the commercially viable agricultural operation on a smaller lot. So if you have a 4-acre lot like Pam does, she doesn't meet the 10 acre qualification for requirement for pasture, but if she can describe how she is pasturing on a smaller size lot, she will still qualify for it.
Is that all public access?
Yes, it's right.
Why wasn't that sent out to all of this?
Because I don't have a good answer for you on that, but
I'm a citizen of this island. I'm a constituent here, and I'm trying to educate myself and educate my friends that are really upset by this.
Yeah.
And so this is what I've got to go by. And you say, no, this is not the truth.
This is the letter of the law.
But I mean, this is available online, I assume, right? Yeah. So I mean, it's there. It's. I'm not saying it's easy to find all this stuff.
Well, I think a mass mailer should be sent out to say that.
And that's what we're planning. Yeah, that's what we're planning.
Also, that people can read that and then say that the draft is incorrect in relation to what's being
So
said.
I don't think you can call it incorrect when it's still a draft.
Well, maybe, but.
I mean, it may not. I'm just, the draft is. Yeah.
This is why there are public hearings, because the department does the best job to interpret the law. And then they don't always get it right, and it's a back and forth. And we the council wrote the law. This is actually 4 bills. So and multiple, they have multiple, more than the required 3 hearings for each. So that whole process was public and publicly noticed. But I will definitely acknowledge we did not do enough public education and outreach. I made some assumptions about who had been connected and who had not. We are working on a very simple 1-page mailer that we will send to everybody in the NDA program to show what their options are.
We never came to the North Eagle Community Council. a lot of small ranchers and farmers all along. Yeah, I'm in touch with all of these things. I'm on this email list. I've watched these things. I've been informed. There was nothing about public testimony about this happening that I was aware of. Okay,
I have 3 pages of notifications and meetings that we kept records of.
Well, I'm telling you.
I'm happy to share that.
Well, share emails that you sent out, share the stuff that I would have gotten public. That's what I need to see, because I'm on all these email lists and none of that was shared with me.
Right, I mean, we all have our obligations. The county has their obligations to provide things in an easy manner. So we have an obligation to make an attempt to find them when they're not so easy. And I mean, I've spent about 6 hours preparing for this meeting today. But I had to dig through stuff like, you know, it's just, it goes both ways. I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong. I'm just saying.
So just in my last comment is though, to be aware of what your Hāmākua community development plan actually states in it, and read that, okay? And when it talks about its different objectives and whatnot, because that is in direct conflict with what this changes to these ag blocks are.
Right.
Okay. And that's what I see. So be aware, you know, your document is not working with this document.
Right. Well, our document isn't the final word. It's just
that's why I want to do the candidate.
And we're constantly looking for things to improve.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Pam, for your comments. Yeah, let's see, we're moving on. Okay. Anyone else to provide public testimony? Doesn't look like it. Oh. Okay. Final recommended draft of general plan. Consideration of adding 1 to 2 additional members to existing permitted interaction group committee members Keeney and Kurakawa to review and prepare comments on the final recommended draft of general plan 2045.
Well, okay, as a permitted interaction group, we have not had a meeting. The plan, final draft of the general plan was submitted to the public on July 29th. And I believe that there are a few days still left, maybe, I'm not sure. I think the public comment section of that plan is for 30 days. I'm not sure of that, but before, yeah, it might be less than 30 days. I think it is, if anything, less, but nonetheless, so the opportunity for us to fulfill our obligation, fulfill our duty and responsibility to comment on the general plan as a action committee will not take place before the end of the public comment period. Consequently, we'll need to make a decision whether we as a action committee wish to make comment to the planning commission directly or through the county council directly. I'm not sure how the rules interact with with that question, but you know, first of all, I'd like to read a section, just a couple of sentences from the draft general plan. It states on page 33, the general plan also provides the legal basis for all of the other elements of the county's planning structure. As such, the plan is the highest order or umbrella plan. It establishes the boundaries within which the county must operate. So the general plan is important, and I think we've all understood that. We are in a situation right now where it's unclear what the relationship is between the draft general plan, which has been submitted by the planning department, and the planning commission and the county council. The planning commission, the corporation council has testified to the county council that in fact, the planning commission and the county council do not have the opportunity to amend the draft general plan. What is going to take place is that the draft general plan has been submitted to the public. Once that, I believe, 30-day comment period with the public expires, then the public's comments will be submitted along with the draft general plan to the planning commission. And then the planning commission has 150 days to consider, but the real issue is, do they have an opportunity to interact with the planning department to change what is currently in the final draft? And corporation council stated that the ordinance of the general plan does not allow that opportunity. Now, she also went on to say that their department rules have not been updated or something like that. And their department rules might allow that communication between the planning commission and the planning department might lead to as Heather put it in the council meeting where all this was taking place, a final draft. And so it's unclear what's going to happen. I believe that there is an executive session that is going to be coming up with the planning department and the council and the planning commission to work out, can this draft that we are seeing now actually be changed? If it cannot, then the planning commission will make recommendations that will go back to the planning department. But the planning department's recommendations will not change the final draft, and that final draft, along with the planning commission recommendations and the public comments, will go to the county council. And the county council at that point will have to vote either yes to ratify the general plan or no to not ratify it. An amendment has been made by one of the council members to the ordinance of the general plan to eliminate that part of the general plan that states that the council does not have the authority to make amendments to the plan. And now what his amendment, okay, so the amendment that has been presented will eliminate a certain segment of the current general plan and make it such that the county council could make amendments to the plan as it comes to them, rather than just rejecting the whole plan outright. And so at any rate, I would be happy to read that section of the general plan that is essentially states that the council cannot make amendments, and then read his bill, which has been presented to the county council, that would eliminate that section if you would like to hear it. But other than that, his bill, it's been determined by the Corporation Council that his bill will not affect this general plan that has been submitted to the council. That will be submitted to the council. So his bill, at least so it was described by Corporation Council, will apply to the next general plan that is made, apparently 10 years from now. My comment would be that if the county council would fail to ratify this general plan, then it would have to go back to the planning department to start over with a new general plan. And if this bill is passed before the new general plan is presented, then his bill would allow amendment of a new general plan. So, okay, that's my understanding of where it is.
I'd like to shake your hand. That was very good.
Yeah.
I can't.
No, it's not very good.
Well, I mean, just that you would be able to.
Well, it's complicated.
It is
I
very
think
complicated.
Heather would be able to verify that it is complicated.
It's super complicated, and what I think is maybe taken for granted is that the county has done this a lot. There have only been 3 other general plans for the county. And so the whole process of creating, evaluating, putting forward the general plan we're still testing it in my mind. I mean, all the other pieces of legislation, we've tested it more, but this is only used rarely. And so, as Tom was saying, the current general plan, which is the 2005 plan, it's an ordinance. It functions like the force of law. That plan has the process for creating the next general plan in it, which doesn't make any sense, but that's where it landed. So what Hāmākua's bill does, which is 181, is it pulls that process out and puts it in the code, or the law code, so that now the general plan can be this ordinance. It doesn't have the process contained within it. As Tom said, the current general code 2025 was actually amended. It looked like that. And then it was amended to take away the council's ability to amend, which is interesting because there must have been a reason for that. And we're still trying to figure out what was the reason that they took away that power from the council. So Bill 181 elevates it to the code. And then I actually don't agree with your assessment. The Corporation Council has not given us confirmation that wouldn't apply to the current code. But we think that maybe it can, because we are already technically for that process in violation of the process in terms of the timing. So, but the gist is like there's no consequence for violating the conditions of the process. And what do? You fall back into the 2005 plan. Well, no, obviously that doesn't make sense. So we're trying to work out a process that can be used in perpetuity and probably also now. What I would say specifically is that there's probably a middle ground where the council does have the opportunity to suggest amendments, but they get pushed back at them. So we kind of have to acknowledge that the planning commission for the charter has that role to determine what the content of the general plan is, but we the council really are just a thumbs up, thumbs down. But we have to have some discretionary authority. So that's kind of what we're thinking right now, is that it'll come to us. We'll be able to suggest some amendments within a certain time frame, but the public has the opportunity to, but it gets kicked back to the planning commission and they decide whether or not to incorporate those or not, but this is a, Bill 181 is a work in progress.
But if it is just thumbs up, with that thumbs down for the council, you say thumbs down, where does that leave the process?
Exactly. That's a good question. There's no answer to that. Right, so that's why we are pulling the process out. And what's even more interesting is if you consider the current general plan, the current draft, as the amendment to the existing general plan, and the current draft doesn't have the process for amending the general plan in it anymore. What does that mean? It means that there's literally nothing going forward unless you consider that they are both active general plans at the same time. Well, and that is stuff. So this is one of the most bureaucratic, convoluted, ridiculous things that we have going on.
It's very complicated.
It sounds like you don't do anything other than just redo the whole thing.
That's pretty much what we're thinking. I think, looking at the language, when Tom has it there, you'll see that it refers to a general plan amendment. So each of these iterations is considered a general plan amendment. And then you talk about making amendments to the amendment. And that's where it gets confusing. Whereas in this case, we have an entirely new general plan. It wasn't a general plan to speak. It is a gut and replace. So I wouldn't call that an amendment. That's a new plan. So I think we need to talk about it in different terms. I don't think we want to constrict ourselves to only amending an existing plan, because there are newer ways of formulating general plans, new tech, new information, new strategies. I don't think we want to tire our hands that way. So anyway, yes, needs to be completely rewritten. And the understanding of what happened if the council were to vote it down, I don't even know. Like that. I don't know.
I spoke today with Hāmākua Inaba. He introduced Bill 181, which was to allow the council to have more authority to amend the draft general plan that comes to them. And he said, well, you're going to have a CDP action committee meeting this evening. Maybe the action committee could resolve a letter of support or introduce a resolution for support of this Bill 181. I would like to do that. My resolution would be it resolved that the Hāmākua Community Development Plan Action Committee expresses its support for County Council Bill 181, which deletes a section of the county ordinance 16.110 encoded in the 2005 general plan and subsequent amendments, which describes the duties, responsibilities, and the limitations of the county council in review of the draft general plan presented to it for ratification, along with recommendations from the planning commissions. Further, the Hāmākua Action Committee expresses its support for any amendments to this bill which may arise subsequent to county council deliberation. I go on and on paper here, I have actually the section 16.110 is as follows, but I'm not sure due to time constraints whether you want me to read that or not. But so I'd like to introduce that as a resolution, and I believe it would need a second. But I think that discussion and decision making would be deferred until our next meeting.
Yeah, if I may, because the agenda item on the table right now is written in that you just kind of recruiting more members for the permitted interaction group that was already established. I feel going on and doing decision making on this on the committee, providing testimony or comment. Although maybe one would have to wait until the next meeting and to be agendized in that way. And then, but considering you already have something drafted, then that can already be shared out. And then And then we can handle this. And then the decision making at the next meeting, that would be. August, that's the September 11th meeting.
So I have a
That
question.
should work, but it'll still be going for council. It's still in committee, so.
Yeah, so if this, what was the gentleman's name? Oh, like that, if he puts this to the council and then, so it's, and I'm sorry, it's to.
The resolution is to allow the county council to have some significant authority. It has minor authority now, but significant authority to amend the
Right,
draft
yeah,
general.
thank you. So to amend, you'd have the ability to amend it, and then when it's, say it was amended by the county council, then is what's the next step?
So the proposal that is in place now with the meeting one would say that the general plan comes to the council from the planning commission after they've taken it in public decision. And that we would then be allowed to make additional amendments. So it's treated like any other ordinance, so it would be amended through the amendment process during the, no, it would go back. So the way that it's drafted now, there would be no requirement to go back to the planning commission. My proposal would be that is a necessary step because of just the significance of the general plan. And there are some there's charter kuleana that the planning commissions have, particularly with respect to the general plan and the review of the amendments and changes to it, that I think precludes us from just willy-nilly making amendments. And you have a good council now, right? But who knows? Everybody's been crazy people later on. You would want that check and balance.
Yeah.
With the general.
Certainly would want it to go back if it's an amendment.
Yeah. So that's not in there now, but that's the amendment that I'm working on. And just so you know, Hāmākua and I worked on this pretty solidly. We determined to introduce it this way and then to kind of correct it.
And then is the process clear when it goes back to the planning commission?
That's all needs to be worked out. Yeah, because it's never been done before. Because when the original general plans were written, there was no planning.
But at least then it isn't just gone through and it's.
Yeah.
And nobody really knows what happened.
Yes.
So we're at 7:15 now. So just to kind of help wrap us up a little bit, I think there's a consensus that we can bring this up at the next meeting, and maybe if there's more information that we can share to the members, so everybody kind of comes with on the same kind of level of understanding on what you guys would be voting on. And then to bring it back to the agenda item.
Well, let me just still, we have a consensus that we want to look at this, and then look at it the next meeting.
So has the resolution been introduced, or is the resolution being withdrawn?
No, this is a bill.
No, me.
Oh, yours.
My resolution here.
We don't need to vote on agenda items. That's not.
Well, the question is whether we would have a second to this resolution introduction.
Given what she said about what the agenda language says, I don't think it's.
You can't do this.
It would have to be at the next hearing. We would agendize adoption of that resolution.
Plus, I think everybody would like to have some time to sit down and digest it.
Well, yeah.
As long as it's not.
Right. In other words, my concern is that I think. Are we allowed to, I think with resolutions, we are allowed to introduce a resolution and at the same meeting, vote on it.
I don't think so.
Well, and I have unclarity about it. Certainly for a bill, we're not allowed to,
But it's an agenda item.
But it was agendized.
That wasn't on the current agenda. I mean, I think it's fine to introduce it at the next meeting.
Yeah.
And as long as we can vote on it at that meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's just gotta be on the agenda.
What's that?
It just has to be on the agenda so that you have proper public notice.
And it's still timely in a month.
There are, my understanding is that there are some motions that are needing to be introduced and then at a subsequent meeting discussed. And then at the third meeting.
That has more to do with the ad hoc committees.
What's that?
That has to do with the ad hoc committees and their.
With the
But if you just want to introduce a resolution or if it's communicated, you want it to be a letter, like it's a letter concerning communication.
We can
You can
introduce.
vote, you can discuss and vote on it in that same meeting as long as it's on the agenda.
Unless this was, you were considering that this would be the report of the permitted interaction. Then
Yeah,
now
right,
that's that
right.
three-step process
Yeah.
that you're talking about, which I
No.
believe is not what's happening.
Yeah.
Right now, we are just, this came up as a side conversation,
Yeah.
but really the question on the table is, are there other members on the committee that want to join the final recommended draft of the general plan 2045 permitted interactions group? Are there other members on the committee here today that are interested in joining Tom and Brad? And to go back to clarifying the steps before July 29th, planning did release the final recommended draft. That is out online. And then planning is planning to do some public informational workshops, right? So that's looking at, I believe here in the agenda, we put the dates August 28th in Kona and August 29th at the Arc of Hilo from 2 to 4 p.m. There will be presentations and I believe a Q&A. And then there will also be an online workshop opportunity available with more information to come. So these 3 meetings, at the end of them, whenever that online workshop happens, then that would be considered the final public workshop. With the final public workshop triggers a 21-day period.
Oh.
After that 21-day period is when the public comment period ends. That is what Tom is trying to explain. So we have a little bit more than 30 days. Yes,
for sure.
And then at the end of that public comment period, the planning department will have 30 days to package up everything, the draft plan and all public comment that has been received, and package that up and give that to the planning commission. Right? Keep in mind, planning will not be reviewing any public comment received during this time period. They're simply packaging it together and getting it ready for planning commission. So a recommendation I'm giving to all ACs and all the permitted interaction groups that are working on general plan comment or testimony is to actually maybe it would be better to frame your commentary or testimony towards planning commission. Get it ready so that it can be heard before planning commission. So once they kind of have those meetings, then that's ready to submit already, because planning department, we're not going to change the draft anymore at this stage, right? We're just going to push it together and just get it to planning commission. So more better to start preparing actually for planning commission.
Very good, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is actually something that.
Okay, so we don't need any more actions on that tonight.
Unless there would be someone who would wish to join the permitted interaction group. Maybe no need.
I mean, you need someone who has.
Oh,
It's already
I
pretty-
mean, I do think planning commission. Recommend.
So there's.
And then from there, they will go on.
Okay, there's that's interesting, the words that they can make changes.
Okay,
Wait, my hearing is shot, but could you say again what you were
No,
just?
I'm actually confused about the process, because as I understand it, the planning commission can make changes. And yet there's actually no mechanism for them to put the changes into the plan, because they don't have that authority.
So would they have recommended changes within their recommendation?
That's the point.
Right, but then we can't vote them in, because we don't have that authority. So I mean, that's, again, it's really confusing. Yeah, and.
Okay, I would,
Thank you for that.
I would suggest that my report on the co-education center meeting be delayed until the next meeting. There's it's time to gather more information. So, okay. Agenda items for the next meeting. Co-education center B1. Any other general plan?
We need to try to get somebody from Hawaiian Homelands to come to one of our meetings and to talk about how and when they're gonna start developing. 40 lots that are there.
Did you understand your response?
I'm actually dealing right now with Tim Richards' secretary trying to get somebody from Hawaiian home to come and talk to us.
Richard, in the letter that I saw, Hawaiian Homes, they indicated that they were going to be considered that these 40 acres held the potential for 290 lots.
Okay, but I'm only talking about the 40 homes that are going to be built on 2 subdivisions.
Right. But
And the only reason I want to do that is because I'd like to see opportunities for the co-center to start by training medical assistants and for some of those people as a incentive to provide opportunities for them to get a building lot. Yeah. That also means probably getting some federal funding to do that, because we've got to see Hāmākua Kahala Health is a FQHC, a federally qualified health center. And I'm going to see if we can get some funding for housing for those people who want to go into the healthcare professions.
We can discuss that next time.
Yeah.
And then if someone can get Hawaiian Homelands to come, I'd like to hear about all their what they in our district.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So got a couple of agenda items, and of course, anyone's welcome to have agenda items by giving planning a call or me a call at some point.
May I ask Heather a question before we end?
Certainly.
While we're talking about housing.
I wanted to hear your voice tonight.
Huh?
Go ahead.
What's the news on the properties that's being built here in Ocala, the 30 parcels? I mean, we're to 2025.
Yeah, that's a Office of Housing and Community Development project. I haven't heard an update on that in a really long time. Let me check in with them and see where they are on that. You know, they were hoping it was going to be something that moved a little more quickly, but I think they've run into some struggles with the development of the site design. But let me get back to you on that if you don't mind. I don't have a quick answer.
Okay, thank you.
If you'd be able to get back to all of us, maybe next meeting on that.
Yeah.
Can I make a motion to adjourn, David?
Well, here, let me just see what else we got here. So we can go just skip all these announcements till next time. Okay, that's done. Yes, motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, third.
Fourth, motion carries.
Hopefully the next meeting we can stay.
Good night, all.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Lonnie. Good to see you.
Aloha.